live, and I gotta pause this because that's gonna be too distracting. If anybody actually is in here, forgive me if I don't listen to the or don't pay attention to the live chat. I will try, but no promises. So this is Humane Mind Live, episode 130. Already up to 130. When you point a finger. I contemplated naming the episode My Finger Point, but I don't think anybody would get that reference.
Well, I would get it.
My finger point.
My finger point. Shirt ripper.
Alright. And of course, that's the first half of the expression. When you point a finger, three point back at you. So, that's pretty much. Well, I think that's one of the main political topics that happened this week. It hasn't been too much, although the second one maybe was more should have been more poignant and should have been more upfront. But the second one is a little more controversial, and it's already led to PragerU being suspended from Twitter, Donald Trump Jr. being suspended from Twitter, a bunch of other high-profile people getting suspended from Twitter, and they are shutting down videos. The video clip I actually had queued up for this when I went to prepare for this stream. It was up yesterday. It was down today. It has been blocked and silenced. So,
That one with the doctor.
Yeah. So with the doctors at Capitol Hill, there are. I have a link right now that was working when I was getting ready for the stream. Who knows if it'll still be working by the time. But it's from Real Clear Politics, so as far as I know, they are right-wing oriented, unless the domains are now hopping onto this bandwagon. And then.
Good, hopefully not, because that's kind of like global restriction there.
Yeah, and then this is something I was not aware of. I know Hollywood is out of ideas, and so there is a Dumb and Dumber remake that we're going to be discussing. And then
I didn't even watch the other one.
Two of a Kind. That's is very so. The rest of these are not really political, and they're just. So a lot of these I was like, dude, that could be an ending clip, but the rest of these are almost like a bunch of ending clips with, but there were so many that I found out this week. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna cram them all in there, and I didn't have much else to talk about, so should be about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. If we start talking about something on a side tangent, but so there's Two of a Kind. I've got the Greenest Acres. Scott Pilgrim versus the 10-year reunion. That's a little too explanatory with the title there, but whatever. Rick AniMorty, and then on top of that, an ending clip. So like a whole series of them that could qualify as just kind of that was cool or that was funny type things. All right, so the first story. The fingers pointing back at you. So this surprisingly went under the radar. So I guess there was another thing that was in the news, which I don't have a video clip queued up for or anything like that. But that was Bill Barr testifying before Congress. Just an absolute nonsense. Asking him questions and cutting him off before he could answer. Accusing him of being a political hack and doing all this stuff just to get Donald Trump reelected. It's like, dude, there's people
calling him racist and all kinds of other just like terrible. He's just doing his job.
It's not like the federal agents are going around knocking people's doors in and taking. No, they're defending federal property, and when people attack the federal property, then they have the ability to go chase those people down. It's not like they're off federal land, nothing we can do about it now. Well,
it's already illegal and
so
it's been on the books for decades. It's just
So the reason I didn't want to quite make that a full topic is because it's too aggravating. just I mean, Bill Barr did awesome. A bunch of the Republicans, a bunch of the right wing, even like Tim Pool and stuff were saying like, yeah, Barr did awesome. But it's one of those things is you watch it and it just makes you so mad at what's going on in this country, and I'm like, nah. There's enough people reporting on that, enough people covering that. This one, however, kind of went under the radar for the most part.
That any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy shall either change its name or be barred from participation in the House of Representatives. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Clause A1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of my resolution is as follows.
Under Rule, the gentleman proceed.
Okay. Raising a question of the privileges of the House, whereas on July 22nd, 2020, House Resolution 7573 was brought to the House floor for a vote with the purpose of eliminating 4 specific statues or busts from the United States Capitol, along with all others that include individuals who, quote, served as an officer or voluntarily with the Confederate States of America or the military forces or government of a state while the state was in rebellion against the United States, unquote, yet failed to address the most ever-present historical stigma of the United States Capitol. That is the source that so fervently supported, condoned, and fought for slavery that was left untouched, but without whom the evil of slavery could never have continued as it did, to such extreme that it is necessary to address here in order for the U.S. House of Representatives to avoid degradation of historical fact and blatant hypocrisy for generations. Whereas the Democratic Party platform of 1840, 1844, 1848, 1852, and 1856 states, quote, that Congress has no power under the Constitution to interfere with or control the domestic institutions of the several states, and that such states are the sole and proper judges of everything appertaining to their own affairs, not prohibited by the Constitution, that all efforts of the abolitionists or others made to induce Congress to interfere with questions of slavery are calculated to lead to the most alarming and dangerous consequences, and that all such efforts have an inevitable tendency to diminish the happiness of the people and endanger the stability and permanency of the Union, and ought not to be countenanced by any friend of our political institutions, unquote. Again, from...
All right. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. But yeah, they basically passed a resolution.
Oh, then they started talking. I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about. The Democrat Party as a whole.
Yeah. So they're like, oh yeah, there's a House resolution to take down these Confederate statues. Well, all right, let's take down the entire Democrat Party.
Yeah, he listed like 4 different time frames of where they're completely in support of slavery, saying that it's unconstitutional to tell us to get rid of it, and yet there are on the books laws stating if you're in fervent support of it, then they have every right to take that name down, and that you can't practice that particular party name. I mean, yeah, that's kind of like one of those known dirty secrets. It's just, yeah, obviously.
So it's pretty good. It's likely not gonna go anywhere, but it's just pointing out that, yeah.
Oh no.
If you think that slavery was so terrible, why are you still part of the Democratic Party? Like, we got to get rid of all these the history of, Washington and Jefferson, and I've talked about those situations.
One thing I would like to point out is I've been seeing a lot of videos about the statues being torn down, and if you go look at the history of Washington, he never actually purchased any slaves. That came through his wife's family because he married into it, and put in his will that all of his property and funds and money were to be divided among the slaves after his wife died. And then a year after he died, before she was still alive, she said, let's just do it. and divided everything, and all the slaves got ownership of what was it, Mount Vernon, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that his?
Mm-hmm.
So that got separated, and there were a couple of slaves that actually had memoirs that said he educated them, taught them to read and write, treated them extremely well, and they got more wealthy after they were in service because of the distribution of what he did. Basically declared all of them free. Very first president.
Yep.
So if you go look on Wikipedia, the presidents that have had slaves, he was touted to have a little over 300. But I think that's an incredible thing he did, because that was during a time when a good portion of the country was still trying to hold on to that type of institution. And the very first president we had as the United States president said it.
Yep.
I didn't buy it. I didn't buy into it. But when I'm gone, this is dissolved. I don't want any part of this, and they deserve their freedom, and they deserve everything.
So
that's an incredible thing.
The other major thing is, in Virginia at the time, there was no other way to free slaves. If you wanted to free your slaves, you had to take them to a northern state where slavery was not as entrenched. And Thomas Jefferson, that he wrote into his will to do the same thing that George Washington did. Although by the time Jefferson died, that the act of freeing slaves on your deathbed was prohibited. So it's like, they're just like, oh, well, it says he's supposed to free all his slaves, but it's now illegal, let's just ignore that.
Well, I was also watching some videos where I saw the Abraham Lincoln statue being torn down, mm-hmm. and everyone's claiming that it's a slave kneeling before Abraham Lincoln, and I guess they missed that word emancipation at the bottom, or the fact the slave is looking up as in, you are now free. That's the whole point of that statue.
Yeah.
But I started reading the comments on multiple videos, and there are so many people saying, you don't understand. Abraham Lincoln owned a bunch of slaves, and he didn't fight for slavery to be I'm like, he didn't own a single slave, ever. There's no documentation in all of history that shows him owning a slave. So he grew up from a poor family. Yeah. Where did you hear that?
Yeah. There's the other thing. Yeah, he grew up from a poor family in the North, where slavery was already illegal. He was Illinois. Slavery was not permissible in Illinois. Where did he own these slaves? He secretly owned them in Florida?
People saying it should be torn down because it shows a slave kneeling before Lincoln in subservience, and that he owned a couple hundred slaves, and then something about him wiping out like 300 Sioux or Native American. And I went and looked that up, and even on the History Channel, like their own site, that's because of encroachment of certain federal institutions that were supposed to keep the peace between Native Americans and U.S. citizens. Mm-hmm. And, as territory was growing, food and resources was diminishing in certain tribes. And so one tribe fought back. They led an insurrection, basically, and ended up raping and murdering a bunch of U.S. citizens. And so about 300 of them were put on trial and said, yep, you're all going to be hung and put to death. And then Lincoln came in and pardoned all of them except for 39, and then on the last day pardoned another one, and so only 38 got hung, the ones who started all of it. The rest, he said, I understand there are some grievances, and I know why you did this. But there are people saying he owned hundreds of slaves and murdered hundreds of Native Americans. None of that is accurate at all. Not even close.
So the other thing is that Lincoln statue that you're talking about was paid for by freed slaves. They paid to put that up.
Yes.
They wanted to honor him for the
black men standing in front of older black men defending it, saying, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what is happening in academia or how they got their tentacles so deeply ingrained into youth nowadays, but it's scary. Mm-hmm. Even when you have real history and present it in front of them, nope, it's denied. That's never has been a fact of Lincoln owning even a single slave.
Yeah.
why is this now all of a sudden he's owned hundreds? Where did that come from?
I don't know, but yeah. So I mean, there's also, we talked about this before. They attacked a statue that was from a saint who was a former slave who spent his life working against slavery. They defaced that statue because they didn't know who it was. Surprisingly, there are some statues that haven't been defaced or torn down, or statues to Lenin, statues to Marx. I wonder what's going on here. We've got abolitionists, we've got northern people, we've got people who freed slaves, we've got U.S. presidents getting it. The only statues that have gone unblemished are socialists. And you're like, well, that's...
Yep. And I think that's what's happening now, is everyone's calling it racism and 400 years of slavery, but that's just the tagline on top of building socialism and Marxism in this country. It's a massive misleading blanket, just saying, look over here, racism, slavery. Let me dangle this in front of you all while let's build up this Marxist base in this country.
Yeah,
that's what I think is happening.
Because Marx and Lenin never did anything racist, except for...
Oh no, except for
Marx.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if Marx owned any slaves per se, but he treated the people at Engels's factories as if they were slaves. He treated the help that was in his house as if she was a slave. Had sex with her, got her pregnant, and then kicked her out on the street. Oh, but Thomas Jefferson, he was such an evil man. And it's like, dude, like, what? Marx. There are numerous times where he's used racial slurs, talked about people, blacks and Jews in negative light, and it's like, oh, but he's the good guy.
It's because it's all completely out of ignorance. So I went and got, I don't know if I mentioned that last week or if this happened in the interim, but I was on Discord and somebody had a chat that said, ask a Marxist anything. And so I hopped on and I was like, okay, what about the dissolution of the family? And it's like, that's not a Marxist thing. And so I was like, well, here in the Communist Manifesto in the second set, he's like, well, I never read the Communist Manifesto. And then I just, why? What? Really? It's like, I'm a Christian, but I've never read anything from the Bible.
Yeah, it's like...
Or I'm a Muslim and I've never read the Quran. Why would you call yourself that and have never read one of the founding pieces of literature? Why?
And also, it's pretty short, and it's like,
yeah, it's like what, an hour's worth of reading, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot to grasp, but how do you call yourself a Marxist and not have read the principal literature of Marxism?
I don't know.
And I had to point out the exact paragraph. It's like, all right, give me some time, I'll go read it. Like, but you're the one who said ask a Marxist anything. Why? How would I know more about what you're supposed to believe than
you do?
Yeah. That's ignorant. But then he went on, like a 20-minute tangent on how I don't understand what I'm talking about. I was like, but I have the book. It's in front of me. I bought it. It's paperback. I've read through it multiple times. I got 5 bookmarks in it. And you said you never read it. What kind of conversation is this? But I think that what is happening is, slightly side tangent, but still related. There is what is that called? There was 2, I think, doctors that were recently, within the last couple of decades, trying to estimate when you learn just a little about something, you feel that you know enough to like start teaching other people, or you feel overly accomplished in that area. But then the more you learn in it, the more you realize. Yeah, Dunning-Kruger effect.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Correct.
You know enough about it to not really be an expert, but you act as if you're an expert.
You know enough to think you know something.
Yeah.
But not enough to actually state anything of any consequence or any actual knowledge. And it turns out the more you learn about it, the more you minimalize what you do know about it. So the experts kind of put themselves under the bar and say, well, there's so much more I still have to learn. Whereas the people who just, they heard about it 5 minutes ago are now experts. Yeah. And so that's what I kind of gathered from that conversation. Why would someone say, ask a Marxist anything, and have never read anything from Karl Marx? Like, that's why you're a Marxist.
Yeah, I could understand not having read Das Kapital, because that thing is, it's what I think the total volume is over 1,000-something pages, and it is dry. It's drier than the Sahara. It's a trudge to get through. I could understand, hey, maybe just reading the Cliff Notes or, something like that. And it's like, yeah, I started reading it, and I got 2-3 pages in, and was like, dude, this is the worst textbook in history, and gave up. I could see people,
but I mean, at least that's definitely authored by Karl Marx. That is known as his kind of his entrance literature into his thoughts on communism.
Yeah, so the Communist Manifesto was supposed to be for everybody. It's the general guide. It's for the layman. It was
what they were handing out to everybody. To say, oh, you don't understand communism? Here, read this. Takes about an hour.
It was like a beginner's guide type thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there is a lot explained in there as to the ideology, and if you can't even read through an hour's worth of, like I think we even established like the 4th section is just referencing other literature, so you don't really only have to read through the first 3 sections when we did our coverage on that. It's just.
I don't think we actually finished it, but we got through most of it and was like, yeah, the rest is kind of.
Yeah, we got into the 4th section, and then it was more of referencing other points of where the ideas came from, but the main ideas of what he was espousing are in those first 2 sections, and kind of in the 3rd section. I mean, it really, within about an hour, you can get the general gist of what his thoughts are, what his view of communism is, and that's the essence of when someone says that's a Marxist ideology. You can point directly to the paragraph where it's mentioned in the Communist Manifesto every time, because he mentioned it. It's all in there, and kind of the shortened, condensed versions, but it's all in there.
He spends Das Kapital, this massive volume, trying to elaborate on the principles he brought up in passing in the Communist Manifesto. And he's like, okay, so this thing that took a paragraph or 2 for me to mention in the Communist Manifesto, here's 3 or 4 chapters of me talking about that one subject. It's a lot of that.
So I think what we have a bunch of knuckleheads, a bunch of stupid youth who have been told by somebody else, this is capitalism and it's terrible. This is Marxism and it's wonderful. You don't even have to read it. Just believe me.
Yeah.
And they just accept it and think they know what they're talking about and never read it for themselves.
Yeah. And the other thing is, there are certain things that they say that you're like, well, you haven't thought this through, because those 2 things, they contradict each other down the line. So if you're like, oh, well, I'm just this
follow
is true,
that one
this
and
is
follow
true,
this one.
Like, wait, those two contradict each other down the road. But there's a whole lot of that. And it's like, oh yeah, I just want to accept the upfront thing. It's like, well, that's going to lead to this, and that's going to lead to that, and then you're gonna have a problem. And they never make that conclusion. All right.
So I mean, it falls kind of pretty much in line with the hey, you point the finger, you get 3 pointed back. But I don't even think people realize they're even pointing nowadays. I don't think they realize what they're doing. They're not even self-aware anymore. They're just, I have been taught this in this ear and this ear, and it just comes out of my mouth, and therefore it must be true.
Yeah.
Like, there is no longer any cognizant thought among a lot of youth nowadays. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of conservative youth, but out of just mainstream academia, it's terrible. There is no self-examination. There is no logical flow. There is no anything. It's rehashing and repeating parroting of terrible talking points that they've never examined on their own.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem. And so I was surprised because like I said, I've been reading this book called The Magic of Thinking Big. It's written by a professor, Dr. David Schwartz, and I got to the section this week, and he's talking about education, and he's talking about the best investment you can make is investing in yourself. But he says a lot of people view education as the number of hours you spent at university and the number of diplomas, and I'm like, dude, this is how old is this book? I was like, that was a problem back then. I thought this was a recent trend. But he correctly emphasizes it's not about how many degrees you have, it's not how many years you spent in college, it's not how many hours a week, it's how much thinking that you have actually gained, the power to think for yourself, the power to come up with new ideas. And he's like, this is before computers. This is when computers were just starting, and he makes the very coherent point, and I was like, man, this guy could see the future coming, because he says there are a lot of people who brag about their education because they can memorize facts. How much is your labor worth, or how much of a success can you be when you can be replaced by a machine? And I'm like,
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, dude, who needs a person who knows a bunch of stuff and who can, parrot things, when you're like, yeah, I can just go on Google and find that in 5 seconds. Why would I need to ask you?
Correct.
Why do I need you to
Never took the extra step to say, why are those facts? How do I use those facts? How do I improve upon them and use those facts to produce more facts or do something else? Instead, nope. You just repeat what you've been told. Anybody can do that. All that shows is you happen to have the money to go and have it shoved in your ear so you can spit it back out.
And I was like, man, I thought this was a more recent trend, but this was a growing concern before I was ever born.
I think it's been a growing concern for a while. It's just,
yeah, because I keep forgetting.
I think it started to become more prevalent the more your average citizen said, hey, college should be available. Because it used to be college, you had to pay a bunch, or it was the wealthy families, it was the aristocracy that kind of ran it. However, they were intending to teach the children actual real life, how to conduct a business, how to make money, how to, maintain your finances, about what.
Yeah.
It was intended to be a well-rounded and intentionally thought-provoking type of education. But as it became more mainstream, I think it started to become very much more dumbed down and just recycling what is printed in books, which is why you can spend 6 months and learn to read this and memorize some facts, but I could do that in a day and open up the book to that page and just read it. Yeah. And now I know just as much as you do. What are you paying for? Why? College was supposed to open your brain to say, let me ask you a question. You think on it and you give me your personal response. Let me ask you some philosophy and think, where does your brain go from there? Let's open up and expand your thinking. Now it doesn't do that at all.
Let me give you a problem. Can you solve this problem? Hey, this is the problem my company's facing. Solve this problem. I'll pay you money for it. I'll make it worth your while.
Let's present a scenario. How would you handle it? Let your brain actually work through it and get some logic built in.
Can you come up with
I don't think that's happening anymore.
Can you improve on what we've already done? Can you add and contribute? Spouting a fact doesn't help with that. I guess it's a neat party trick or something, like trivia contest. Hey, you want a trivia contest? Yay! But without the ability to problem solve or to improve something, your worth to a business or your worth to society in general is worth less.
Yep.
So I was surprised. I was like, man, that So okay, the book, I keep thinking it's older than it is. So it's 1959 is when it was published, but that's still, I was like, dude,
I mean,
that's
that's still kind of older, but
that's 60 years ago where this was coming in. And I'm like, man, some of the insight in this is like, dude, yeah, this guy knows. This guy was on the ball, and yeah, that would have been right around the age when computers were just being introduced. I mean, still largely.
yeah, when they're in universities at their early stage,
Yeah.
they had those massive tape reels and
Yeah.
junk being by the government.
All right. So I don't know if this is gonna get my YouTube channel banned. I doubt it because I don't have very much traffic here. But this is at least one article that is thankfully still up and has a little bit of the video. So I don't know if I should play the video or not, but you're aware of it, the doctors that were talking on Capitol Hill. And these are just a group of doctors that were tired of, tired of the mainstream narrative, and they're like, yeah, we're seeing the exact opposite in our practices. We're tired of the mainstream narrative and people talking like this is this huge problem that we were never going to recover from and we need to keep everything locked down. And they're like, we've been treating patients and we've got a very good record. Okay, so Stella Emanuel is the one that kind of was going the most viral here. And so I'm just going to state this. She's treated over 350 patients with COVID-19 with not a single death. You would think, hey, that's pretty impressive. What are you doing? We should start adopting what you were doing because that's an amazing track record during COVID.
Yeah.
But no, it's the exact opposite. There was a video of her, a segment of her speech that I was going to link to during this that got taken down. Like, so she's talking about giving people hydroxychloroquine. She says she's prescribed it to her entire staff. She's giving it to her patients. They're recovering from it, and she says because they're recovering from it, she's giving it to other patients. It's like, yeah, it's not like she was prescribing it to a patient and that patient died and she kept prescribing it. No, she saw them recovering and was like, yes, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do what works. And also because of that, and a research that.
I saw a study. It was from maybe it was like Switzerland or something, where they did an in-depth study on that, and I think even CNN commented on that. The most recent study, and it was a European study that showed that hydroxychloroquine is actually effective in treating and reducing the number of deaths. Yeah. That was like almost a month ago.
Yeah.
And
so there's also
it may be MSNBC, but I'm thinking it was CNN that posted an article saying this could be potentially viable.
So Ted Cruz put on that Twitter was like, hey, should we ban CNN for this? He was asking Twitter if they should ban it because they were reporting the news on hydroxychloroquine being effective, and he's like, yep.
The terrible thing is, if you've got doctors with, I understand this could be considered anecdotal. However, I would consider those live clinical trials as well.
Yeah.
Beyond just being anecdotal, they have the actual representation of how well this works. And if after almost 400 patients diagnosed with COVID-19 being treated with this and no deaths, that's well beyond the percentage of any country that still has, a high active COVID-19 infection rate. They're all still quoting somewhere around 0.5 to 1% or something like that.
Yeah.
No deaths out of 400 is you're kicking the crap out of that number.
So that's
that's amazing.
That's the other crazy things. A lot of the earlier studies or the studies that were first, that were kind of like, oh, that's just, it's not completely peer reviewed, it's not double blind and all that. They were going off of studies, and you look at the actual population size that they were doing, and it's like 60 people or 90 people. And you're like, that's the study? And it's like, this is 350, and you're saying, well, this study that had 60 people or 90 people total, that's an authentic study. That's not necessarily anecdotal. We can extrapolate larger from that. And it's like, but 350 is way it's a larger number than the number that you used for some of your studies.
Yeah. But I mean, beyond
if 350 is anecdotal, then all of these studies are anecdotal. You can't submit any of them.
But beyond the hilarious hypocrisy of all of this is the overall goal of what everyone's being told is stay at home. If you have to go outside, wear your mask at all times and stay this distance away because we're trying to save lives. But these doctors are coming out and saying this is how you save lives, and they're being banned.
Yeah.
Just from speaking out and saying, here's our experience on this and what we've done. Here's some factual data. Let's at least examine it and take it into consideration. And they're being blocked and banned, and anyone talks about it is being banned.
And
how many thousands of lives are probably going to be lost from that?
And Breitbart, which is a news organization, didn't say anything about what the doctors were saying. They simply broadcast the video recording of these doctors speaking, and Facebook shut it down. And it's like, this is the news, whether you like it or they're doing their job reporting what is going on in the news. If you can't do that, what? I could understand you be like, oh, how these doctors, you should, but it's like, you can't even report on what they're saying, and that gets you that gets you banned, that gets your platform shut down because you're recording what somebody else was saying. Like, if somebody goes to a rally where people are saying, like the news footage from Charlottesville, where they were quoting like the blood and soil or whatever from Nazi slogans and stuff like that. CNN aired that footage. Oh, we should take it down because like that's holding them responsible for what the people they're recording say. It's just completely. What's that section 230 or whatever it is, where Google and Facebook and all of them, they're treated as publishers, so they can't get sued for what somebody else says. So Google,
but yet they're blocking everybody else for doing the same thing on their platform, of which they're doing that.
So they're offered that protection because they're supposed to be acting like a publisher, and Breitbart in this instance was acting as a publisher. And Google is punishing them for acting as a publisher, which makes Google not acting like a publisher. It's just, it's all.
Well, see, okay. So the thing and this may be going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's ultimately related. And I've been watching some similar videos online. It's just, this is the new religion. Mm-hmm. You buy into mainstream narrative, and if you don't, you're a heretic. You must be silenced. You will be shut down. Doesn't matter if you use logic, science, you can prove things wrong or right, accurate or inaccurate. You either toe the line or you're a heretic. This is starting to look now not quite like the Inquisition, where we're, beheading people and hanging and using Iron Maidens and stretching people out, but where your business can be shut down. Your livelihood can be taken from you. You can be ostracized from some sort, an industrial community saying, hey, this person had these views, never let them work in this market again. Your entire family can be doxxed, harassed. Your life can be threatened. This is like a digital inquisition at this point. And what we can see here is this is the new religion. They're building out their new religion Bible. And if you don't quote those texts, you question, well, why does it say that here but not here? Oh, blasphemy. You need to be doxxed, taken down, 10 pegs, and beaten in the streets. And that's what you deserve because you went against what we said. That's what this seems like. I mean, I understand that sounds a bit hyperbolic, but not really.
No, it's right on the line. I mean,
so I started watching YouTube videos because I was watching something silly with like South Park when they were going over Mormonism and kind of like cracking jokes, just talking about Joseph Smith. And he was like, well, an angel came down to visit and he was Native American, but he looks white because, original Native Americans were ancestors of the Israelites or something, whatever, like crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
And then there was a Mormon lady, like, watching it and just getting. She's I guess former Jehovah's Witness who switched to Mormonism,
I don't know.
and then was giving her comments on this. And then she was watching it and basically saying where things were accurate, and like, well, yep, that's what our passages teach, and that's what it says, and yep, he found those golden plates in the ground along with the seer stones and yada yada, but then was defending on ludicrous things because like, well, I found these golden plates, but I can't show any of you guys. Nobody's allowed to see those. And she's like, well, technically there was 8 people and we have their names here, and they were all his like family and friends who said, yep, we saw it. And she's defending it like, well, because those 8 people signed and that it happened. And then he put these rocks in a hat and talked into the hat, and that's where he got translations from the different plaques. And one of the plaques got scriptures stolen and they disappeared. And so he's like, well, and ignore that. We'll move on to the next plaques. And just like all these just things where like, I'm pretty sure that dude was like just lying out of his rear. Snake oil salesman. You should have seen this, but they believe it wholeheartedly. They can't unbelieve it.
And when I was doing Bible studies with them, the guys who were doing the Bible study with me says, pray to God that you believe this is
He'll
real.
tell you if it's true or not. Yes.
No, it's not. Will tell you if it's true or not. He said, pray to God that you will come to believe this is true. And I said, that's where I was like, dude, that crossed the line for me. I was like, you pray
to God
that he.
And if I believe in God and I hear something back, is it true? Not pray that I do believe it's true.
Yeah, like make me believe this is true. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's because if it's wrong,
that's pretty darn
cultish. That's like, oh, let me be deceived. It's like, whoa, that's.
But I mean, so I was watching some of that. I'm just like, there are all these cults popping up here and there, but I'm looking at the COVID stuff. People don't understand even how to use masks. They're like sitting there with their masks on saying, wear a mask or you're going to kill people. And then they get aggravated and they pull their mask down and it's hanging on here and they start yelling in people's faces. And like, you right there in your actions are disproving everything coming out of your mouth right now. Even the mayor of New York City does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Governor, freaking Cuomo, doing the same thing. Had a video. This is a chin strap. This is a mask. Day later, wearing it down on his chin like a chin strap because he's full of doo doo.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch like the press in the press corps at the White House saying, "Oh, Trump doesn't wear a mask. And then they'll stand up and it's like as soon as and then they pull their mask off in the room and it's like.
President.
They pull their mask off and they're standing there in front of the cameras, walking out, and you're like, dude, you just you wore that
right
mask
after the press conference
solely for the press conference. It's all virtue signaling, and
every
Dr.
live
Fauci as well has been. There's pictures of him going out in public and pulling the mask.
Doing
down.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Biden every time he does some sort of live a message, doing the same thing, pulling the mask down because nobody can hear him through it, and he's talking. And I think it was like a month or two ago, he went to this like a church. I guess it was like a Black Baptist church or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they had this like photo, and everyone had their mask down.
Yeah, that was the one where he said an unarmed person comes at you with a knife.
Yeah. Well, I saw the meme picture, and there was like a dude with no arms or legs hopping in a pool, and there's like a knife by his head. I guess that's what he's talking about. But I mean, it's just, we are getting dangerously into the area of where cultist mentality and this strict adherence to some terrible ideology must be adhered, and those within the group don't question it. They don't think for themselves. They don't whatever. And if you're outside and you ask questions, you're the heretic, you're the enemy, you're Satan, you need to be taken down. When this isn't even a religion, it's not based off of any deity, it's a freaking virus. We know what viruses are. Yeah. They've been around for millennia. Modern health science, we can say, yeah, masks work. when you wear them like a mask. Don't be coughing and sneezing in people's faces. It's pretty common sense.
Mm-hmm.
We do that with any other infection. So, I'm not against the masks. It's just, I understand the purpose of it. And I can also say, I'm not going to wear a mask in my car. I'm not going to wear a mask at home. If I'm walking in a parking lot to a store, I'm not going to be wearing my mask then. Nobody's around.
Yeah.
So if you want me to wear a mask walking into the grocery store, that's fine. I'll comply. I get it. I'm pretty sure I don't have COVID. I've been stuck in quarantine in my own home for months.
Mm-hmm.
But that's fine. I'll comply. But when you're yakking at people, or you're telling married couples, hey, you're not 6 feet apart because they're sitting on a park bench or going to the beach. We've gone to like ludicrous, ridiculous, just ridiculous areas of society. No one's using their brain anymore to say, why 6 feet apart? At least just ask yourself that. It's so you're not coughing and sneezing on people. But if you live in the same house, that's kind of irrelevant. Has no parents. If those are your kids, they sat in the same car to get to the grocery store. I don't think that 6 foot rule matters between you and your kids.
No, it shouldn't. It's like, well, you could stay 6 feet apart away in public, and then back at the house, you're together. So it's kind of like...
For real.
It undermines anything that would have been... Yeah, it's goofy. And
I cooked dinner with no mask on. We all ate it. It's just...
Yeah, it's...
I tend to believe...
People not thinking... Or not using their brains.
I'd like to believe your average person does think, does possess some logic. And I still believe that that's true. That the majority of the population has common sense, can look at something and say, something's off. Something's not right. I'm seeing this, but I'm hearing this, and they're not equal. But yet, most of what I'm seeing online, most of what I'm seeing on media is just the most ludicrous, terrible examples, terrible anecdotes, terrible examples. Just, I don't know.
Yep. So it's bizarre, but I want to kind of segue a little bit into the Biden situation, because this kind of does relate to him, because this is what spurred this kind of little side tangent. And I know I mentioned at the side notes they're doing a remake of Dumb and Dumber, and you'll understand what I'm talking about when I play this clip.
So if you saw the show last night, you saw that Dr. Mark Siegel asked the president about the cognitive ability test White House physicians have given him. And amazingly, the president was happy to talk about details. Here's part of it.
It was 30 or 35 questions. The first questions are very easy. The last questions are much more difficult. Like a memory question, it's like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman, man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good.
So guess who else was watching that? The weightlifter over on CNN and his buddy Don Lemon. So the weightlifter, the governor's brother, decided
to them talking.
Dr. Reiner explained it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But usually when there is some issue or some concern about, your cognitive abilities. So
what were the animal shapes?
Well, it's a lion, a hippo, and a camel.
Isn't that a rhino in the middle?
A rhino.
You don't even know a hippo from a rhino. You got no acuity, son. You got no acuity.
I'm looking at it backwards. I'm looking at it backwards.
What does it mean if you don't know an elephant from a rhino?
An elephant.
What is...
So they're trying to make fun of Trump as not being cognitively there by pulling up the same test, and he couldn't even identify an animal in the first 3 questions.
Yeah. So Don Lemon calls it a hippo. It's a rhino. what's his name? Chris Cuomo corrects him and says it's a rhino.
Called an elephant.
And then, like, a couple of seconds later, Chris Cuomo said, like, what's it mean if you can't tell the difference between a rhino and an elephant? And then my mom was like, elephant? Who said elephant? Just like...
Yeah.
So they can't
So,
even remember.
I mean-
they can't even remember what they're talking about within the span of, like, 30 seconds. And they're trying to make fun of Donald Trump's cognitive ability. It's just... Oh, dude, I was dying laughing when I
It's
saw it.
terrible. Because he's holding the paper. Donald Trump just like made up something on the spot and was still able to recall it in the same order. I mean, it's only 5 things. It's not difficult, but it's just while being interviewed and talking to this guy just standing there, it seems sharp enough to me.
Yeah,
He's definitely has some memory and recollection.
But these guys can't even
he's
remember what they just
holding
said.
the
Like,
paper. There's only 3 animals there, and he messes it up while looking at it. And then Cuomo can see it, and then still calls it the wrong.
it's not just the wrong thing. He calls it something completely separate. It's like,
Yeah.
you didn't even make the same mistake of calling it the first thing.
Yeah.
It's, oh, dude,
You can't tell the difference between a rhino and a hippo. He's like, no, can't tell the difference between a rhino and an elephant.
what? Who said elephant?
So, how is anybody still believing these guys? Why? Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
What?
Yeah, and so I have taken one of those cognitive tests. When I had my court case, my defense lawyer questioned my sanity because I thought the whole case was complete BS, and was like, "Dude, this is ridiculous. This entire situation is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
Like my brother, the person who's the victim, is here. He'd like to testify on my behalf. Is that not even?" And they're like, "Yeah, you can't even do that." And I'm like, "Dude, are you what is up with the laws here? What?" The state has more of an interest in punishing me than the person that I supposedly victimized. Yeah, it was
correct.
Completely railroaded me.
Two brothers in it. Yeah. 2 brothers in a tiff. I mean, that happens.
Yeah. So
it's ridiculous.
I was irate. She was not interested in defending me or taking my side. She was interested in that she was my public defender that was siding with the court against me.
Yeah, just kind of taking somebody down.
Yeah, and when I said this is ridiculous, there's got to be something I can do. There's got to be something like, hey, can we at least like lower it to a lesser offense or something along those lines, which is what it ended up happening, but not because of her. It ended up happening because I was arguing with the judge about it, and I'm like, dude, do you not understand the situation? It's like, so originally it was I forget which one is higher. Yeah, so originally it was domestic abuse, and they lowered it to a charge of battery. And I'm like, domestic abuse? What? What? I was like, are you guys like? Because if I'm not mistaken, domestic abuse isn't that goes in the lines where they can take away your right to bear arms because of right domestic violence. If you're charged of a domestic violence offense, you have to if you go and try to get a firearm with that, you'll fail the background check. So so the original charge was something higher like that. It might not have been domestic abuse. It might have been assault. I forget which one is, but I got the lesser of it, and I was like, but it's because I was talking with the judge. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. This is way overboard considering what the events that happened. Anyway, but during that process, my defense lawyer made me take one of these cognitive tests, and I think Donald Trump is playing it up a little too much. It's not a really difficult test. It is basic thinking skills, pattern recognition.
They start off easy, they get a little more difficult. Some of the last questions, and the last question he asked was not difficult. It's just memorize the sequence.
Yeah. So so he talked
like,
about there was kind of like a middle of the road question throughout it. So there's something else they will ask you to memorize or to remember something at the beginning of the test. They'll say, hey, yeah, here's something. Remember that. And the whole total test takes like 45 minutes. And so something they said at the very beginning of it, you've got to recall exactly the same way they said it. And it's like objects in a random order. And so you're memorizing other patterns in between, like number patterns, like okay, which number comes next in this, what is this, what's the sequence, and then at the very or close to the very end, they're like, yeah, what was that thing we told you to remember at the beginning? So it's a pretty comprehensive test. I would say the remembering the random order phrase at the end seemed like a little, to me, I was like, oh, that's actually more difficult than some of these others, and I could see people not getting that right or whatever. But the questions do get progressively harder as you go, and there's also cumulative knowledge that you. So there's other things as like, oh, here's the same type of problem we just gave you 5 minutes ago. Can you still do it? Because they want to make sure you're not memorizing things, or because it's testing your full cognitive ability. If you had just memorized certain responses, when you got back to this, it's like, well, maybe your memory is good, but your ability to recognize and work out solutions to easy problems, or I guess mild problems, if you don't have that ability and you're like, oh, I could memorize, but I can't reason and put these together. Anyway, so they test a large number of things and in multiple ways, but I think the main reason Trump was talking about that is because Joe Biden doesn't. I'm pretty sure he would fail in like the first half. Like, sir, we've only been doing this test for 15 minutes out of the 45-minute time, and there's no way you can pass. there's no way you can pass the rest of these, even if you got every question going forward correct. Even if you got the rest of the questions correct, you would fail. So I think that's the reason Trump keeps bringing this up. But yeah, it's amazing that these two CNN analysts we're even worse. Yeah, it's man. All right. So that was just a bit of humor, but this is an amazing video clip, and I don't know if I'll play the whole thing or not, but.
When me and Brad first met, I didn't think we'd get along, but turns out we kind of agree on everything. Your racial identity is the most important thing. Everything should be looked at through the lens of race.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke. We both have a lot of opinions about people of color, even though we barely know any.
I say colored people, but as long as we're classifying them, we both think minorities are a united group who think the same and act the same.
And vote the same. You don't want to lose your black card. Sorry, I don't know. I just think we should
roll back discrimination laws so we can hire based on race again. Jinx, now you owe me a Coke. Hey, tell them what you told me yesterday.
White actors should only do voices for white cartoon characters.
I've been saying that for years. Stick to your own.
Us white people, we have so much privilege.
I agree. It is a privilege to be white. Ask him about interracial dating.
All I said is that black men who date white women have internalized racism, and white men that date ethnic women are fetishizing them.
Guys against interracial dating now. Like, am I being pranked? Did Boomer put you up to this?
Ugh, you know that taco place is white owned?
White people should be making white foods, like Kraft macaroni and cheese, no seasoning, not even salt. It's like he's a mind reader. I mean, I've been pushing for segregation forever, and my man does what?
I created an improv comedy show exclusively for ethnic people.
Guy segregates comedy on my birthday.
White people need to stop wearing dreadlocks.
Okay, so there's more to it. Oh, okay, so this is Ryan Long.
I segregate comedy on my birthday.
Okay, yeah, so I heard about him on Tim Pool. He was talking with, he mentioned this video and I had to look it up. And I have been kind of on a Ryan Long binge. This guy is fantastic. He's got just regular stand-up comedy, but he's also got kind of a man on the street where he goes and asks people pretty crazy questions. So during COVID, he basically got a broom handle and taped a microphone to that and went up to people and it's like doing COVID interviews. But he's asking questions like, how old should there be an age cutoff for sex work? And then he starts talking about how his grandma keeps bringing Johns over to the house. And there should be a cutoff age for that, right? Like, she's too old to be doing this. So shouldn't there be a law against it? So, yeah. So, yeah, he's got a bunch of those. His channel's amazing. So there's a whole bunch of other sketches and just kind of. There's also one that's really good. It's Allies for Allies, a newspaper or something, or a journalism group or something like that. And so there's 3 women sitting on one side of the table, and there's a bunch of guys on the other side, and they're trying to be allies and everything, and they keep interrupting the women. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. And everything that they try to, like, the women are trying to do, these guys are trying to be super allies, and they're interrupting and turning things completely the wrong way. Dude, I can't. I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but yeah. So this guy's channel is really good. Definitely worth checking out.
All right.
Yeah. And apparently he's got a podcast. Haven't seen any of the podcast stuff yet, but I've been watching the man on the street bits and the sketches.
Yeah, I mean, but I understand a satire, but how that's very easy to see the comparison on how someone who's woke and a actual racist are trying to segregate society.
Yeah,
I mean, even in that stupid Chaz thing, they had a garden for blacks only. What? Really?
Yeah, just wait, there was some water fountains that were like blacks only back in the day, right? Who was behind that? Oh, those were the bad guys.
All right, I'll have to check that channel out.
Yeah.
Or his stuff.
Yeah,
see what's up about it.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's really funny. All right, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this exists. So I was really tempted to make this just the ending clip and then end it on this, but.
Green Acres is the place to be. Farm living is the life for me. Land spreading out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me that countryside. The George.
What's yours?
Fresh air.
Trump Tower.
You are my wife.
Goodbye, City Hall. Green Acres, we are there.
Please.
What is that?
It's for some like award show, like the Emmys or the Grammys or something. I don't know, the Oscars, something.
That lady seems familiar. Like she's got that like high pitched.
She's from Parks and Recreation. She's what's his face's wife? Like Tammy One.
Oh, Ron Swanson's.
Yeah, Ron Swanson.
No.
Yeah. That she's that guy's Nick Offerman. Yeah, that's his real life wife. She
Okay.
That really high pitched annoying voice was on the Will and Grace.
Nah, I'm thinking there was a show where there was like it was one of the early TV sitcoms that was like trying to introduce like LGBT stuff, right?
Will and Grace. She was one of the. She's that really annoying lady.
Okay, yeah, with the high shrilly voice.
Yeah.
That okay, yeah. That's where I recognize her because they had those clips all over, like 15 years ago. But I don't know what that show is.
It's
something on CBS.
It's on CBS, and it's some award show like the Grammy, not the Grammys probably. It's the Emmys or the Oscars. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, that's good. I think everybody liked Trump right up until about 2015, and all of a sudden he became worse than Hitler, like overnight.
Yeah, the worst person on the planet. All right. So this one, I couldn't come up with a title that didn't get.
When did that show like end? Back in the 50s? Nobody watches that.
Yeah, I don't know. But Ted Cruz and Michael Knowles were on Adam Carolla's show, and he mentioned that clip being in there. I was like, wait, what? And so I had to look it up, and it's like, it's real. this is real life. This is a thing that exists in real life, and that guy is now president. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, even on the flip side, Trump used to be invited to that kind of stuff, just like normal nonsense TV award junk. He used to be included. He used to get the invites, and now they're like, well, running for president, you are a Hitler 2.0.
Yeah, and even when he just started running and people thought his whole campaign was a big joke, they had him on Saturday Night Live. And that was like one of their better like episodes, because it's the one with where they were doing was it Hotline Bling with the Drake, and they were making fun of that music video, and instead it's a bunch of old guys dancing, like old dad dancing.
Oh yeah.
And Trump is in there. And
exactly like the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Making fun of the way Drake danced in it. Like, yeah, he dances like an old guy. And so then they got a bunch of old guys. And Trump was in there.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I remember that.
All right. Yep. So this next clip, like I said, I kind of gave it away with the title, but I couldn't think of a way to hide what it actually is. So this is really cool.
This, Scott. In fact, I'm sick of it. I thought you might be more.
I don't know why it's got...
Hey everyone, I'm Edgar Wright and welcome to a very special read of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It's been 10 years since we released this movie, and clearly we're all exactly the same, and the world hasn't changed a bit either. But we thought, what the hell, we'll gather together anyway like we always do. But in all seriousness, the love that you, the fans...
Yeah, so it's another reunion thing, and it's really awesome. So I think they have everybody except Brie Larson. Who else? Well, they don't have the Katanagi twins. Who else are they missing? Because they had to have somebody read multiple parts that wasn't in the actual movie. But they actually go through the full script of the movie, which is ridiculous.
Is Young Neil in there?
Yeah, and Young Neil. So Young Neil is not in there. They had one of the other guys doing his parts, and then Anna Kendrick did played the part of Brie Larson's character, which escapes me, Nat.
Oh yeah, I guess she could probably fill in. She's kind of got that snarky attitude.
Although she didn't do the singing, which
is that okay? Is that Aubrey Plaza with the glasses?
Yeah. So she did the live. So
it looks a little blurry, but
yeah. So that's Aubrey Plaza. The one I didn't recognize at all, and this is she plays Kim, and I'm like,
oh, she's the drummer.
Yeah, she's the drummer.
And
I was like, wow, she's looking really good. I didn't think she was that attractive in the film, and I'm like, wow.
Well, at first I thought that was Kristen Bell. Same haircut.
Yeah, it looks like Kristen Bell. Yeah, I think she's hotter than Kristen Bell, but that's just me.
Wait, so who's the guy next to her?
So this guy, he fills in the part of so Matthew Patel also not here, not in this group. So he plays the part of Matthew Patel and a couple others. He's one of the producers, or something along this lines. The guy underneath him, that's the actual guy who created the books, or I guess the graphic novels. And then there's another guy over here in the bottom right-hand corner who is the writer or co-writer or something. I forget what he's either a writer or a producer. So there's a couple guys who stood in to do like narration and things like that, but they worked with Edgar Wright on the project.
That's still pretty awesome. I mean, not everyone's got huge big name staffs, but they got Chris Evans and Anna Kendrick, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Jason Schwartzman. That's awesome how they can get everyone together like that.
And the crazy thing is, so they're reading the script. It's a kind of a shortened version because they don't have all the, the special effects scenes and stuff like that. But
sure.
I was like, they deliver the line. I'm like, man, how many times did they practice this before they made the actual movie? Because it's like, you could play this along with the movie, and you wouldn't. I mean, like, if you're just listening to both, you couldn't tell which one was the movie and which one was a live stream hangout 10 years later.
Yeah.
I was like...
Well, I mean, honestly, I think the casting was superb on this because Scott Pilgrim, Michael Cera is just kind of being himself in there.
Yeah.
And same thing with Jason Schwartzman. That's just kind of that's how he is in his movies. He's just like that Gabriel guy constantly. So I don't think anyone has to like.
They didn't have the actual vegan police, yeah. So they didn't have Thomas Jane or what's the other guy's name?
Yeah.
He was in the Boondock Saints sequel, but I can't remember his name. Something Junior, right?
I believe so. Man, I always forget his name. Clifton Collins Jr.
Yeah, Clifton Collins Jr. That was the best cameo ever. And this thing, I forgot at the end.
There was no reason for that, but it was still pretty awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say the only person who is like semi not themselves, but more of a like parody is Chris Evans.
Yeah.
Like everyone else just did themselves, but it was perfect for the role. It's like what they should have been in the movie, and Chris Evans just came off like douchey Chris Evans. So he's like, what if I felt like being an a-hole today? And then I'll play that character. And it was awesome for that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So all right, I'm gonna have to check that out.
One of my favorite films of all time. It was really cool to see them all get back together and do the live read. And so whoever did the editing also threw in little graphic cues and stuff like that to kind of. So there, during the Zoom call, Aubrey Plaza, when she does the scenes where it's cussed but it's bleeped out, and like, how are you doing with that mouth? Like, she actually has a little black piece of paper on a pencil or something like that and puts it in front of her mouth. And you hear the bleep, so I don't know if she's hitting the button to bleep herself out or if that was added after the fact. But I was like, dude, how do you... All right, either way, it was fantastic. So,
yep.
Yeah, one of my favorite films of all time, and they said, I forget who they said. Well, somebody maybe they'll make it for the 30-year reunion. Like if they'll get back together every 10 years and do a reread this film live. All right. Well, it is. It's already after 8:30, so okay. I've got 2 more clips here. I'm not gonna play this whole thing, but yeah, this is fantastic too. Can't believe it. All right, that's how I'm gonna play. But that's really cool.
What is?
It's Rick.
What is that?
It's Rick and Morty.
Like
anime style.
that's an official video. They just did it like odd anime style.
Oh, there's a bunch
with Japanese.
There's a bunch of Rick and Morty in different styles, and I don't know if like people just made these and submitted them to Adult Swim, and then Adult Swim was like, all right, we'll take it. So there's a couple of these that are. Yeah, so Tower of God. Why does that name? So this was so it's directed by Tower of God director. Why does Tower of God sound familiar? I don't think I've seen that anime, but it sounds
anime. Because
yeah,
there's like a Japanese song I heard that was part of the closing credits or something. So it's some kind of anime. I don't know what it's about.
Yeah. So there's a couple of these. So there's like
or no, it's a K-pop song that they redid in Japanese.
Yeah, I don't
for
know
that.
if they reach out to these people to have them do a little like absurd Rick and Morty episode in a different animation style, but this is like, I think I've seen at least like 4 or 5 of these. I mean, not always anime style. Sometimes they're like CG. Like there was one with where Rick and Morty were samurais and it was all CG. And then there is one where it looks.
That's really crazy though. Like storytelling wise, that happens in a ton of animes where they sit and talk about what happened without actually showing or doing anything that actually happened. They just talk about it. like, hey, you remember that time? And so you see their mouths moving, and they're sitting there, and they have like emotional music in background or whatever, talking about things. Maybe you see a replay. What? That's super accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely anime storytelling. Talk about it, don't show.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
Like the exact opposite of American storytelling.
Yeah, it's cheaper to
Show
talk about it than to show it. It's like the
It's true.
What, Thumbtanic? Oh, this is so it's so expensive. No one will ever be able to recreate it. It's just two thumbs in the water while they're describing the sinking of the Titanic.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all I had. It's man, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened this week. So I was like, oh, all right. Well, this will be mostly laid back, mostly comedy oriented, or just cool stuff. And here's another thing that I found out about this week, and was like, man, this has been out there for a while. I can't believe I haven't seen this before, but this is ridiculous.
I am sitting between the famous brothers. But obviously, it seems to me, at least from the outside, your parents must have done something right.
Well, wrong. How about no? Thank you very much for making that manifest so clearly. Just stop being pathetic.
I mean, I've scribbled down a few things here, but I fully want you guys to take as much control here as you see fit.
I'm not in a good mood. Things are likely to be unpleasant. Why don't you just go play in your room for a while? No.
Man, this is complicated as shit. You guys are trying to fix things, manage things without having civilization crumble at the same time.
It's been a continual challenge to adjust my sophistication to the level of challenge, and I'm trying to do that. Okay, I don't get exactly what you're saying. I don't get exactly why you're annoyed. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to do to change it. Let's get this clear. There's something gone horribly wrong, and I think it's become more and more like that over the last 30 years. But I'm slightly less terrible than I was yesterday. You are not paying attention. I think it.
Right.
Man, that is crazy editing.
Yeah.
Like they almost look like they're staring at each other. Just.
Yeah. So.
That's pretty awesome.
So these are like Dave Rubin. That's when he was talking with the Weinsteins, or Brett Weinstein and his brother. What's Sam? No.
Eric.
Eric.
Yeah.
Eric and Brett Weinstein, when they were on a show, and so they took the clips of that and they merged it with two different interviews of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, like different hairstyles, different dress, like just dress styles. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and this is part two. There was another clip that was but this one was definitely better than the other one. So like a much better editing job. So I went with this one, but yeah. I was like, man, and this is from 2018. I was like, dude, how did I miss this when it first came out? All right, but that's all I had. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Oh, and I move tomorrow. Boom, new digs, new apartment.
Should be pretty awesome.
Moving on up to the east side.
Is it actually on the east side?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the east side, but it's east of where I am.
Huh.
So
fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be posting pictures on YouTube or anything like that, but I will be posting pictures on Facebook and stuff. And yeah, it's really, really nice apartments. So it'll be a nice upgrade, and I won't have AC units or fans, interfering with my audio, because they've got central AC and better internet connection that I won't have to share with anybody. So, yep, all around an upgrade. So looking forward to that. And other than that, I don't have anything else to say. So I think I'll go ahead and end it there, and if you got anything else you wanted to add, go ahead.
yeah, I guess 2 real quick points. One, over the last couple of weeks with COVID and lockdown and just all this terrible stuff that's constantly happening, riots and everything on fire, I'm starting to gain just a little bit more confidence in humanity in the state of the United States. Trump has sent in federal troops and things are getting done. Portland police are now working with federal troops, and Chaz got shut down in a day over in Seattle. Portland is now starting to get back under control. Even the mayor had to say, okay, yeah, now we're cooperating. So I'm seeing a little bit of the U.S. and just your general sense of humanity coming back. I think that's a positive thing. You know, I think people are now beginning to realize that buildings on fire and smashing windows and people with tear gas and Molotov cocktails is not really a peaceful protest. I think they're slowly waking up and saying that's not going to work anymore. We can't really call that a peaceful protest. So I think that's a good thing. Additionally, I think there is most definitely a silent majority that later this year, I'm very confident that America is going to make the right decision. I think people are just getting really fed up with this nonsense. But I'm starting to see little hints, little glimmers of decency and order popping up as of late. So I think those are good signs.
Yeah, and I was just hearing the mostly peaceful, and I'm thinking, so Ben Shapiro keeps saying the mostly peaceful is kind of like saying, oh, O.J. Simpson was mostly peaceful, but I don't think the O.J. Simpson example quite works. I was like, yeah. But I mean, if you said something like Hitler,
it's mostly not lethal.
Yeah, he spent most of his life not killing people.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple other good examples. Like Jeffrey Dahmer was mostly peaceful, mostly not a cannibal. So if you think about it, I mean, he spent way more of his life not eating people than he did eating people. And I was about to say, I was like, there's got to be some example in, like, and I was like, oh yeah, we actually do have a real life example. What was that? That ISIS terrorist leader, and they're like, yeah, this astute religious scholar.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, dude. Yeah, I was like, man.
The one who got blown up in the tunnel. Yeah. Like, he blew up with his kids. Soleimani, right? Was that something like that?
Was that Soleimani?
It was that back in January. Yeah.
I don't know if it was Soleimani,
or was
but
the guy before him. Yeah. Maybe it was the other guy before him, like the one from this December.
Soleimani was the general, right? It was the guy before him that was just like this ISIS terrorist.
The Ayatollah something.
Yeah. I don't remember the name, but the astute religious scholar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like astute religious scholar. You mean a person who terrorized people, and then mostly peaceful protests.
Mostly, right. You only killed a couple hundred. That's all. But yeah, I just want to point that out. Every once in a while, I see a little sliver of decency, humanity, order, and civility popping up here and there.
And I think, despite people like Shapiro and a couple other people are being pessimistic, and I think Trump's going to win in a landslide, and then all of this insanity, well, some of it's likely to continue, because even after 2016, it continued for a couple of months, but then we had a lot of years with people saying and doing insane things, but not so much destroying things and the rampant outlaw or lawlessness. So I think things will get back together, and then hoping we've got 4 more years before the end of the world, at least.
That's what I'm hoping for. Just a little longer to prove we're all better off just thinking normal, logical thoughts. We don't need to go down wackadoo lane.
I plan on being a billionaire in a year or less, so I gotta have time to actually use that money.
Yeah, go buy yourself a John Galt Island. I'll join in.
Yeah. That's like the going Galt. That's kind of the dream. All right. So thanks to anybody who ended up joining me on this, listening to or watching the stream. or ends up watching the stream in the future. And we will. Oh, starting next week, we will go back to Tuesdays. So, Tuesdays are finally open. So starting on the 4th, we will be back on Tuesdays, and should be 7, maybe 7:30, depending on when my boss lets me go from work. All right. And I'm gonna go ahead and end right there.